Hello, thank you for joining. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to our Smiley Talk Positive Connections, where we're going to be discussing how having a caring community can have a positive impact on us all. So our Smiley Movement Education Ambassador, Ray Snape, is going to be hosting today, and we have three fantastic speakers too. But before I hand over to Ray, I'm just going to give you a short introduction about Smiley Movement itself. So I'm Amy, the Chief Editor at Smiley Movement, and we run these Smiley Talks twice a month. So we have the aim of inspiring people to drive positive change. Now, Smiley Movement is a non-profit. We're sponsored by the original Smiley brand, and we align all our work, everything we do, through these Smiley Talks. We publish Smiley News. We have a podcast called Define Optimism. We align our work with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So this talk covers off the UN goals, quality education, and also good health and well-being. So it's positivity all around. Wherever you're watching, so we're streaming on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and please feel free to pop some comments in the questions in the comments below, and we will aim to get to them near the end of the hour. But now I think I'm going to hand over to Ray, who's going to introduce our speakers and get into the discussion.
Thank you so much, Amy. Well, I'm delighted to be joined here this morning on what is quite a sunny morning by three wonderful colleagues. So we have Chris Dyson, he's the head teacher and national leader of education of Parklands Primary School. Dr. Lisa Stevenson, course leader for the MA in Creative Learning and director and founder of Storymakers Company. And then we also have Bea Stevenson, Head of Education for Family Links, the Centre for Educational Health. So good morning to the three of you. It's really lovely that you're here and able to join me. So I'm going to come to you each in turn, and I'm going to ask you to give me a little bit of a flavour about the work that you and your organisation are doing, with a particular focus and a particular frame around the importance of community and connection. I think over the last 2 years, we've seen how important it has been when people in our communities have stepped up, cared for each other and supported each other. And I think that it gives us a fresh look at what we can sometimes take for granted around those relationships and how important social relationships are for individual and community thriving. So I'll just come to you each in turn and just to tell us a little bit more about yourself, who you are, your organisation, and then we'll get more into the discussion. So Chris, introduce yourself, please.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much, Ray, for inviting me to this lovely, happy, smiley talk today. And think so. Well, the community for me is everything. I'm Chris Dyson. I'm head teacher at Parklands Primary School in lovely sunny Seacroft up in Leeds. Very challenging estate, one of Europe's largest council estates. High levels of deprivation, over 60% pupil premium and free school meals. So getting the community on board has really been so essential for our school. And, you know, I think personally speaking, I am a bit different. We were talking about this off air at the start. I found, to be fair, the last 2 years to be my most rewarding time that I've ever had in any school in my career, because instead of chasing kite marks for healthy eating, for investors in pupils and things like that, and instead of just concentrating on SATs and exams and testing in early years, year 1, year 2, year 4, year 6, we've just been able to focus on what our community needed during these awful times and how we could get the community linked with businesses to help provide to make their lives a lot easier. So, as I said, I know there's been lots of challenges, but it's been something different every day to get your teeth stuck into, and you know, really making the community, and in my opinion, and I'm a bit biased obviously, but for my community, I think I've had the happiest community and happiest parents that I've had in my 8 years since we've been here, because of the things that we've done for them during these this awful pandemic times.
Thank you very much, Chris. You are, as ever, a breath of fresh air in our education community, and that's a really lovely start. So, Bea, I'll come to you next, if I may. Tell me a little bit more about yourself and the work that you are doing.
Great, thank you, Ray. So yeah, I'm Bea Stevenson, and I'm Head of Education at Family Links, the Centre for Emotional Health. So Family Links Centre for Emotional Health is a national charity, and we're dedicated to the promotion of emotional health for both individuals, but also organisationally, at home, at school, and at work. So when we think about community, we're thinking about it in its broadest sense, and particularly in the work that I do with schools. A school community obviously is made up of people from lots of other communities. So it's a sort of umbrella, if you like, for a whole breadth of people from different backgrounds and with different beliefs and different practices from home. So one of the things that I think we think is really important at Family Links is building a foundation for emotional health, for relationships to thrive across a school community and within the community, the communities within that kind of broader community. So, emotional health really is the foundation of everything that we do. And one important principle of emotional health for us is that it's universal. It's really, really for everyone. And that if you can build an individual's emotional health within that enabling emotionally healthy culture, then actually that provides the foundation for learning. And just building on what Chris said, really, I think when the schools that we've been working with that really do have that kind of relationships at their heart through the pandemic have been able to reach out to their families and provide what the families most needed during the last couple of years and adapt their approaches, I think, understanding what their community really, really needs. So there are lots of different ways that we support schools and families to build that emotional health, and hopefully we'll have a bit of an opportunity through the conversation today to touch on some of those.
Thank you so much, Bea. I love what you're saying. I find that so stimulating. Lisa, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and the wonderful work you're doing?
Yes, thanks so much, Ray. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Lisa Stevenson, and I am the director of the Storymakers Company at Leeds Beckett University. And we are a practice and research-based centre. Our focus is on creative learning, particularly in the areas of drama and creative writing, but also all aspects of creative learning. And our focus within the centre is really about using creative learning to help to build a sense of community. So using creative learning as pedagogy. And for us, that really focuses on amplifying and celebrating diversity within classrooms, thinking about working with teachers to think about how that might create models of curriculum. And for us, the idea of community really centres around a focus on mutual participation, because community and the idea of community is shaped through experience and shaped through meaningful relationships. So we're really interested with thinking about the ways that vibrant communities can be created and explored critically with groups of children in classrooms and with teachers. So I guess our focus is really on thinking about the sorts of learning that creativity and story can promote in classrooms. So thinking about, the components of vibrant communities that may be around deep listening and cooperation and, I guess, negotiating values and all of the challenges that come with that. So I think we see our focus on creative learning as an opportunity as well to connect, very much as Bea was saying, to connect children's experiences and to celebrate their communities outside school. Creative learning as a pedagogy can be a mediation space, if you like, to bring those experiences into school as well.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you so much. There's such a lot in there that I know I want to come back to you. I've got some questions already I'm thinking about. But Bea, if I could start with you. You were talking about this idea of that there are lots of other communities within a community. And I thought that was a really great point that we perhaps can overlook, that a community is likely to be very homogenous. But then this idea that you were talking about the universality of emotional health, and I wondered how you define emotional health. How do you get people to engage in that idea? How your work promotes this fundamental shared understanding?
Yeah, sure. So our emotional health is made up of our ability to look after ourselves and to manage ourselves in times of challenge and to build and sustain healthy relationships with people around us. And I think particularly in our schools work, so we have our 3 strands of work at home, at school and at work. But within a school, of course, all 3 strands come together because it's a workplace. We have obviously the multitude of families that we're working with, and there's a very specific kind of school culture and context. So the universality principle is really important to us, that actually the way that we build relationships with people around us is about being responsive to different people's needs, to different people's backgrounds, and being really consistent in the way that we're responding. That doesn't mean that our responses are always going to be exactly the same, but that because we all know that different children and indeed different adults will respond positively or kind of be able to support and manage themselves if actually they have a slightly different response, but that we're treating everybody equally. So a lot of our work is based on talks about Carl Rogers' idea of unconditional positive regard, yes, which is this idea of acceptance and that actually everybody has the personal power within themselves to achieve and to find their own solutions and to be resilient, of course, if they are in that enabling environment. So actually, if we can create those cultures within schools where adults are responding to each other in a way that is empathic, so empathy really is the cornerstone of our program. So responding with empathy so that people do feel listened to, they feel heard, they feel valued, then we can accept that families and staff and children within the school community will have different approaches, will have different beliefs, but actually that we can hold all of that within that school community so that we're building that really thriving sense that actually, yes, I do belong to this community. Because I think often we talk about a school community and we assume that because a child goes to a school, they're automatically part of that community. But actually, an important part of being part of a community is identifying yourself as that community. So, building those relationships through responsive adult interactions with children and with each other is really how I think we can support everybody to feel really like they are a valued part of that community.
I think that's just gorgeous, and I absolutely love the work of Carl Rogers. I think as many educators do, that idea of the importance of empathy and positive regard. It's so fundamental to building that sense where people feel that they have that sense of belonging, that they are trusted and they're able to participate. Lisa, earlier you were talking about this lovely word. I love this word, vibrant communities. But you also similarly threw in something that chimed in to my ears with what Bea is talking about, is that not everybody's going to have the same views. So you specifically talked about children engaging creatively and critically, being able to negotiate, being able to disagree. How does that play out within a school in such a way that it builds that harmony ultimately?
I think that absolutely. I think I like the idea of thinking about this in terms of responsibility, and that's Kelly Oliver's work. So our ability to be able to ethically respond and to be responded to, and I think that was what Bea was saying in terms of mutual recognition of each other and active listening. I think in terms of the way that creative pedagogy can help, and this is just one of many ways, but something obviously that we're very interested in through Storymakers, because we do focus on researching with children. If we take, for example, drama pedagogy as a way of working, drama and working through fiction and working in story worlds is an opportunity to expose children to a range of different perspectives that may be different to their own experiences, but also invites children to bring their own lived experience and their own and values into that space as well. So I think utilizing creativity, as a way of creating opportunities for children to think about themselves in relation to other people is a really effective way to think about negotiating values. I think key to this for me in terms of pedagogy is giving children the opportunity to practice some of the skills and some of the dispositions that we're thinking about in relation to having a vibrant community. And sometimes that might be that they disagree. But using creative methods such as story always allows us to stop that moment creatively, and then to come away and think about it and reflect on it, and then perhaps to go back into that story world and to replay that moment again. So we don't, if you like, have the percussions of real world consequences, but we're holding space for children to actually, as I say, practice those skills. So we do that in lots of different ways. We've got lots of different case studies and examples of that work that allows children to connect in new ways, perhaps to create a sense of community together. I think another thing to say perhaps is when children are working within a story, there's often a shared purpose. There's a shared call to action within a story. So although they might have different experiences outside school, and we're using that sense of diversity, we're using their lived experience to create something new together in a school space. And I think that shared collective purpose gives them a space again to, I'm going to use the word again, but to practice that sense of compassion, and also to work through scenarios where they might disagree.
I love the word compassion there that you were just talking about. And compassion, when I think about compassion and community, well, Chris Dyson absolutely springs to mind, because I know a few head teachers who are as devoted to their community as Chris. I might as well declare I'm a big fan of Chris's, because he's larger than life, has so much vibrancy himself, but does a lot for your community. You do a lot for your community. And I'm particularly struck by one example which you shared with me around Christmas Day. So I wonder if you could tell Lisa and Bea and our other watchers, our other participants today, about some of the work that you've been doing with your community over the last few years.
Oh, where do I start? So I will. 1 second. It's because we're still working today, so my office door's never closed, so you'll keep seeing it open and closed today and things. So, but yeah, it was the first. It was the very first Christmas I was here 8 years ago, and I was just walking around the school as I did, and I was flabbergasted to see I only had about 4 different families that had been to see Santa. Now I've obviously got 3 children, and you get bored of queuing up for a couple of hours to pay about £8 to get a little plastic toy off Santa. And I thought it's every child's right to see Santa at Christmas time. So I made a decision straight away that we were going to open up school on Christmas Day, and we were going to give basically 300 simple hampers out for the families, give them a bit of Christmas Day. I pulled my senior staff in to tell them that this is my dream and this is what we'll be doing. They said, nobody will work on Christmas Day. And you've got to listen, because they were correct. Nobody did want to work Christmas Day. So I thought, well, we'll go to plan B then. We'll open up school on Christmas Eve. And we started slowly. As I said, I just wanted 300 selection boxes from Asda and a bit of food on a Christmas table and things. And then business in the community got involved and said, we can get you 300 presents, footballs, books, clothes, toys, Lego. And it started like that. And then we had these quality presents. And then another company came along, because Christmas time's great for businesses to donate, because it morally makes them feel a bit better with the multi-million pounds that they're making. And we actually we had a company that donated a real life snow machine. So when the parents and children came, there was snow everywhere. A company donated reindeers. So you've got these big, hard, tough year 6 boys walking up the drive going, huh, look at them donkeys with sticks on their head. I'm saying the reindeers. But and not a lot of children knew that reindeers were real. They thought they were fictional and things. Now we fast forward sort of 8 years, and we do 800 Christmas Day dinners. We get 800 presents donated from businesses and the multinationals and the national businesses and things. And it's open to the entire community, so our children can come with their older siblings, younger siblings, grandparents, aunties, uncles. We had real life unicorns in the hall. Don't ask me how I made that happen and things, but it's just to provide that sort of awe and wonder. And when the community see you going those extra few steps, you know, it makes them love the school. And when the parents love the school, the children are happy. If the children are happy in school, it means that the teachers can take more risky lessons because they know the children behavior-wise are going to be great. The children then are going home happy. The parents are then happy because their children on the estate are coming home happy. You know, and I can't wait, touch wood, as we approach Easter, that I can start inviting my parents back into my hashtag Best Seats in the House Assembly that we run every Friday, where pre-COVID, we were getting 120, 130 parents in every Friday afternoon from 1:15 till 3 o'clock, literally Ant and Dec style, all singing, all dancing, assemblies and things, leaving the teachers in the classroom to get the marking done and the planning done for the next week. And it means the kids are going home ecstatically happy at the end of the week. The parents are so happy because the kids are coming home happy and not grumpy and things. So that was basically the start of our sort of business links developing our community.
Chris, I love what you said, and this idea of the school being at the heart of the community, but also from an educational point of view, you also talked about the fact that where the children have this strong sense of belonging and that sense of trust, it's not fluffy stuff. It's not just fluff and fun, because I know that you are also a very high performing school and that you get all the great results for your kids. They achieve really well in English and maths. But I don't think until today I'd really heard that connection. So I'm really grateful to you for explaining that little connection there between, once you make the children feel that strong sense of belonging, then the teachers can ask more of them. I know that your results in maths are some of the highest in the country, and I'm sure that's the same for English. And I find that really exciting and interesting to listen to. Can you just explain a little bit? Do you need to pick up the phone there?
I'll put it back down.
But I think that's great. You know, it's because somebody might listen to what you've said and think it's all about crowd pleasing and making the children go home happy. But actually, you also nail the results, don't you? Yours is an outstanding school. You get high results. Tell me a little bit more about how you make the children feel so safe so that you can raise the bar for them.
We had, for example, we had 13 head teachers come from all over the country last Friday, because seeing is believing. Because obviously when you're on an estate school with such a high proportion of free school meals and pupil premium, people expect to have low expectations and things. But people come into it from all over the country, and even from Spain. We've had the Director of Education from New Zealand that's come over, because they can't believe our 5-year-olds, our year 1 children, are fluent in all the times tables. You know, and when you've got not just 1 or 2, but when you've got 50 out of 60 year 1s already knowing all the times tables, it shows expectations are high, you know. And then to develop that into Key Stage 2, you can now go into any Key Stage 2 class from year 3 to year 6 and say 6 8s, and they'll answer 52. Now, there'll be some people on the call today, now I was jotting things down thinking, well, 6 8s is 48. But because the children are so fluent in the times tables at an early age, in Key Stage 2, they've got to do the times table and then subtract it from 100. So 6 8s is 52, 6 10s are 40, 6 6s are 64. And having that element of competition, having that element of fun. And as I said, the Best Seats in the House Assembly is all literally singing and dancing, but everything builds up into the grand final of the times tables for the week. So again, it gives the children confidence. It gives the children a sense of belief that learning can be fun. And if learning's fun and children are enjoying it, they're going to achieve so much more.
Ray, can I just build on something that Chris
Yes,
is saying?
please.
Because I think this is just I think often we kind of think that within a school context, it's either or, like you either have to have fun or you have to be seriously learning. And Chris has just given us an amazing breadth of examples of why actually the two things go hand in hand. So a lot of the work that we do is really playful, and we have a real focus on building emotional health through having fun. And I think that it does a number of things. It builds individual self-esteem, because actually, you know, laughing together, feeling good about kind of being part of a team, all of those things it creates, it builds relationships. So whether it's the staff group that you're running a session with and you're having fun with them, or whether it's the children, or whether it's everybody together, you know, actually I think that having fun and having high expectations aren't different things. They're actually really importantly intertwined. And the more that we can support schools to kind of take that approach like yours, Chris, where you recognize that actually that sense of belonging, that sense of being part of a team, that sense of feeling valued does come through enjoying being together, is it will mean that they're in a better place to learn and to thrive. So I think you give some really good examples of what that looks like in practice.
Thanks. And Lisa, I was going to come to you as well, and I'm sorry to interrupt, because you were talking about using story makers in order to build purpose, shared purpose, and that sense of community. So I wonder if you've got some stories that you can build on what Chris and Bea have talked about.
Absolutely. And I think that idea of learning through play, learning playfully, and that being a safe place, but also then being a place within story worlds, because stories are about human experience that are driven by emotion and do bring challenge. I think the combination of that is what perhaps can create a sense of vibrancy, and also definitely, as both Bea and Chris were talking about, that sense of engagement, because we feel valued. So that is at the centre of our work as well. And also our work really focuses at story makers, and our research through story makers focuses on the links between engagement and emotion and play and well-being. So I have a couple of little examples I'd like to share of some of our work. And again, very briefly, just to touch on them. One of the things that we do is we create stories with children, which we publish. So we have a press called the Story Makers Press. And essentially we're using we're focusing on pedagogy and creativity and story worlds, and a sense of children coming together with a call to action within a story world. So using elements of drama and creative writing and art, and not just the spoken word, but bringing emotion and action into the classroom, to the pedagogy. So we were lucky enough to create a story with 18 girls from British Pakistani heritage in Bradford. And what they wanted to do, what we did with them, is they took a South Asian folk tale called The Inauspicious Bride. And over 2 or 3 months, they created their own version of that using lots of the creative processes that we talked about. And in that original story, The Inauspicious Bride, the female character is very voiceless. And the girls were able to collectively to restory that character and the setting in the way that they wanted. And it was a negotiation. So they were coming from a particular place outside school. And again, this was the school that asked us to do this based on some work we'd done before. So the focus for the school was about raising the girls' confidence. And they created an incredible story called Zalfa Amir is a Warrior. And they created Zalfa, who was a kind of a very funny, powerful female character who overcame all of these different challenges in the story world, and who, I guess, really challenged some of the stereotypes that were in that story, that original story. And I've got a quote here because I think we're talking about sort of the power of community and the power of working in particular ways to create community, from one of the girls, which is, she seems like so confident, and she's definitely not small. She's a lot of self-confidence, and other people. When someone's calling somebody a name, they can learn from our story because she's not taken down by small comments. So I think, a lot of our work is researching with children, and there's a sense that creating this story world brought the girls together to act in new ways. It gave them confidence. They were able to re-story in the way they wanted. It was a celebration also of their cultural heritage. So another comment, I was surprised she wasn't scared because she's brave. She's brave at home. And it really relates to how we are and our language and stuff. So it was really nice. We could all, create as well. So I think this sense that, again, that there's community within the classroom space, the community outside school is brought into that creative process, and also the girls then are creating a new sense of community because they're wanting to say, this is a character that we want to share with everybody else, and we want them to learn from. And I think that unpacking community in that way, so that children see their own realities reflected in what they do in school, is really important. And I think that's one of the things that creative pedagogy can offer as a tool for community.
That's such an amazing example. And I know that will have positive ripples into the future, not just for the individuals involved, but for the community. And Lisa, you particularly talked about this idea of researching with, not for, not to, not by, it's researching with, which is it's really harmonious, this balance about going on the journey together. And there's a saying that I like: do not walk ahead of me, for I may not lead. Do not walk behind me, for I may not follow. Walk beside me, and let's see where the journey takes us. And I think that what I'm sensing is that the three of you, when you are doing this practice, you are very much at the center of your communities, not looking from the outside, but really there working with the people, children, adults, colleagues, co-workers, and so on. Amy said at the beginning that what we're about here with the Smiley movement is trying to drive positive change. And in your work, have you seen positive change? Have you got some examples of positive change?
Yeah, sure. So we're running a number of kind of projects that I'm really excited about at the moment, which introduce the nurturing program. So all of our work is based on the nurturing program, which is a cognitive relational program. So it's on the basis that all of our responses and our behavior is based on a combination of cognitive responses that are in relation to the relationships we're building and our interactions around us. So we work in the nurturing program across a community. So we might be running programs within the school, we might be running a program in the children's centre, we run programs with parents and families. So in one particular project, for example, we're working with 3 primary schools, a secondary school, a children's centre, and a military barracks, all with this idea that actually, as you were saying, that actually it's an empowering program. So it's not about coming in and saying, this is the way that we should behave, here are some tools to behave in that way. It's very much a kind of reflective, facilitative process that supports people to think about their own needs and how they can manage themselves, and then how that then translates into the relationships that they're having with people around them. So in terms of the positive changes we've seen that from where primary schools and the children's centre and even the secondary school were working in silo, we're starting to see that actually staff across those schools are working together to run parent programs, for example. So parents that might have access to the children's centre but also have a child in the primary school are really kind of given that space to reflect and supported with the approach, so that adults across the community are then, as I mentioned it previously, kind of being consistent in the responses for the children around them. And I think sometimes we underestimate that, the importance of that actually the family home might have one approach and be really, really different for a child who then goes into school, which has really tight, kind of strict rules and regulations, for example. So the boundaries might be very different between one and another. And actually, if you are able to support adults across the community with that consistent approach, the child can feel safe in the knowledge that actually the way that, you know, their expectations of them, and there are expectations across the places that they find themselves, are the same. And so they can recognize, you know, what responses they might be getting. So I think that for me is a really important thing. There's kind of the links between different adults within a community and a child, regardless of whether they're at home or at school or in the centre, can be that it's predictable. It's predictable and it's a safe environment that they can find themselves in.
And how lovely to work across so many phases. That's really a great element of that project. Sounds wonderful. Chris, we're talking about driving positive change, and we touched briefly on SATS results and so on, but you must have seen positive, transformative change that isn't about data and what your young people are like when they leave your school, and perhaps maybe some of the stories that come back to you later. Have you got stories of how your leadership has led to that transformative change for young people?
Well, just to put a bit of data in, not SATS data though, but, you know, I mean, when I first took over this school, there'd been 150 exclusions, there or thereabouts. We had our own padded cell in school. Everything was built on strict rules and using a stick as opposed to a carrot, and it just wasn't working. You know, we had attendance was around about 85%. But changing that ethos to put the respect to the children, that's not letting them get away with anything, you know, but having that respect to the children, having a child's voice. You know, we got rid of the padded cell within seconds of me arriving. We got rid of the exclusion room because, in all fairness, the naughtiest kids in the world wanted to be in that room because it was 17 of the naughtiest kids in with one teaching assistant, and you've never seen chairs being flung around like anything before in your life. So something had to change, and I put a music stereo system in, you know, which plays music. So when children are walking around school, they're singing along to songs. You know, there's no silent corridors because, in all fairness, when as adults do we walk down silently down a corridor if we've stood with a colleague and things? So it was that two-way sort of respect. And as I said, attendance is now, even during COVID times, is still at 95.5%. And pre-COVID times, we were up to 97, 98%. And on a fun day Friday for the best seats in the House Assembly, attendance was around about 99.9% because nobody wanted to miss school and things. So when you get the ethos right and you've got the children wanting to come into school, you know, attendance can just go through the roof and things. But it's sort of been the sustainability of projects that we've done as well, you know, because we work with a great, fantastic organisation in Leeds, and I wish this was nationwide, called the Flourishing Families. And the Flourishing Families come in and work with our reception parents and their children. So we like to get the children and the parents working together on storytelling, where they bring in those good old-fashioned story sacks with the booking and all the little toys that go with it and the castles and things, you know, it creates that engagement of learning things. We have the Flourishing Families Monday Cooking Club, where 8 children come in for a 6-week project with the children, and they cook. They make a meal, which is something like chicken chasseur or chicken stir fry or chocolate crispy buns with a chocolate mousse and things. And the children have got to make this from scratch. So they've got to weigh the ingredients, they've got to chop the ingredients, they've got to cook it, and then they've got to do the good old pots after. And then different parents sign up every 6 weeks for that. But the reason why it's an initiative like that is so spectacular is because when the first set of parents finished, they come back the following 6 weeks and they just pick up the ingredients and the recipe card. So instead of doing it in our sort of canteen, they take that ingredients home, and they're still working with their parents to create a lovely meal. And what you can make for a family of 4 for £5 is quite extraordinary. And this is all step by step, you know. And again, it's that positivity of getting parents coming into school, because obviously when you're in an area such as Seacroft and things, a lot of the parents had awful school experiences. And if they have awful school experiences, the very last thing they want to do is to come into school and to be part of that school environment. So those are the barriers we've got to sort of get rid of and things. And I go back to pre-COVID, when I was having 120, 150 parents into every Friday assembly, and that includes also the Thursday class assemblies and things. When I first started, I went to Marks and Spencer's, didn't go to Tesco. I went to Marks and Spencer's and I bought 80 donuts, and I said, come into school, I want to hear what vision I've got for your children and where I want to take us. And only 3 parents came in. So I knew then I had a task, and the staff were saying, no parents will come in, they hate school, they won't come in. So again, I weren't going to give in, so I took all those donuts out to the playground and I handed them all out to the parents collecting the children. I said, I'm going to do this Friday talk every week until I've got 50 parents in who want to listen. And the following week, I ended up with about 80 parents in. And I still got donuts, but this time they came from Tesco.
That's really wonderful, Chris. I just think that energy and that passion is absolutely infectious. I'm going to have to visit your school and take my place for the best seats in the house. We've had some great questions coming through the chat this afternoon. And the last ones that's come in actually speaks to what you're talking about, Chris. But perhaps I'll ask Lisa and Bea to give their views on this first. So the question is, should it be the school's responsibility to create a community among the children and parents? That's quite a good question, isn't it? Is it a school's responsibility to create a community among the children and parents? So Lisa or Bea, who'd like to start us off with that question?
Well, I think if when you talk about a school, what do you mean? I mean, are we talking about the building? Because I would include children and parents in a school community. So, you know, when we say, is it the school or is that just the staff? I think if you can actually see the school community as the parents as much as the staff, then it isn't one part of that school community's responsibility, it's everybody's. So actually, we talk a lot about the importance of daily interactions and how they build the kind of emotional health and the climate. And actually that could be an interaction between a parent and a staff member. It can be an interaction between 2 staff members. It can be, you know, and actually the children are learning so much about relationships through those interactions that they see around them. So I think it's everybody's responsibility. I think, and actually that's really important for the children, that they see that their parents and their teachers and everybody, you know, all adults around them are working together to create that thriving community, which I think is, you know, really speaks to, again, Chris, you know, the way that you talk about it in practice is like, actually, if they've had a really bad experience of school themselves, just getting them into school with donuts, you know, and with biscuits and tea and making them feel like they belong there is the start of that. And then everybody can take responsibility for themselves as individuals to create that climate together, I think.
And climate is everything, isn't it? How you make people feel is critical. And John Dunford talks about visible leadership and this idea of your role modeling all the time, those relationships. So it creates the microcosm in the school of what you want to see in the wider community. Lisa, is it the school's job to do this, to create community?
I think wherever we can create community and build links, because if community is about shared experience, then where they can be built is beneficial to everybody involved, and it, as we've said before, promotes engagement, and so absolutely if it's possible. And I'm really interested in what Chris was saying there around making, you know, around cooking, and you know, we talk about story making, but really the focus is on the making, is on the doing together, is on the idea of not what we can't do, but what we can do together and what that feels like, and recognizing the kind of learning that promotes, and giving that, I guess, you know, giving that defining it generously rather than narrowly, because sometimes there isn't the value placed on making, the power of making together to build community, because it's invisible, or perhaps it's difficult to evidence. And I think a lot of my own research is particularly around the idea of making and links to well-being. So I think when we can make connections that give children a holistic experience of community, then that can only enrich the teaching and learning and engagement and well-being of everybody involved.
Absolutely. It's so important, that sense of well-being, being there for everybody and community thriving, and everybody has a role to play in that. Chris, slightly different question, but I wonder if you've got some thoughts on this. So somebody's asked, how can I help boost the community feel within my child's school? I don't think it's very tight knit, and I'd love my son to have that. How can parents help boosting that sense of community?
Again, by having an open door policy. When parents are annoyed over something, with parents themselves and little things nigglers, there's nothing worse than wanting to speak to the head or wanting to speak to the head of pastoral and having an appointment for a week next Thursday, in which case the problems, may have been sorted out themselves and things. But, and listening to parents and listening to the community is so important, because, when we go back to the previous question, is it school's responsibility? 100% yes. And the reason why I say that is because when we go to lockdown and the government had to provide the meal vouchers, which in the first instance was an absolute disaster. And these are people who are desperate for food, and even having the sort of meal voucher, the supermarket's at half an hour walk away from here. So parents are expected to walk half an hour, use a voucher that didn't always work, and to walk back. So we made the decision, and thinking out of the box and linking with companies, to make sure that we gave the food directly in hampers to the parents. And this is why, as I said, our community felt so grateful during that time, because even though it was on lockdown, you only had limited children in, it was my daughter's 12th birthday, and it was May the 21st, 2020, hottest day of the year, and I got a call from McCain's oven chip factory over in Caton Bay in Scarborough, who said, listen, we've got you 19 tons of food. Now, 19 tons of food, before those get the calculators out and calculate, that's 35,000 meals that were donating to me. So I had to work logistically with Dennis Distribution to get me a refrigerated van so it didn't defrost on the way. Then I had to get in touch with the Mansfield Group, who sent me 3 great big lads and a forklift truck to get it all off, and we distributed 35,000 meals in 3 hours. We had 2-mile queues all around the estate. We had vans coming from Rotherham, from Bradford, from Wakefield, just to come and get this, because I was sharing it amongst everybody. And again, so extending that community feel. And then we did 19,000 meals from Whitby Scampi. So all this is the best sort of food. And the parents are like, this is in addition to the weekly hampers that they're already having home and things. And so that's why it's the schools, because the schools like the magnet. You can attract sports companies, sports clubs and cricket clubs and tennis clubs to come in and do their coaching. So it involves them, and then they've got future players and things. We've got things like the Learning Development Consortium, who fund our holiday clubs at Easter, at Christmas, and the summer holidays, which are really vulnerable times for areas like this. And it's schools is that, as I said, it's that magnet that can attract all the other parts of the jigsaw to make a really happy community and things.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chris. And you said at the beginning of this hour that you've never felt more like this sense of community since COVID, because we've taken away all the other stuff that's not quite so important. We've looked after people, we've fed them, we've educated them, but we've not had some of the same sort of pressures. I agree with you. And I think that, we've had a question here that says, interested in your thoughts, colleagues. Do you think the heightened sense of community in the past few years will continue for years to come? How can we make it stay? And then this lovely line, my neighborhood has become brilliant. My neighborhood has become brilliant. B, Are you? Yeah, exactly. Let's applaud that. Do
Yeah.
you think we can make that stay? How do we make that stick? Because people have been out delivering food packages. They've looked after their neighbours. Can we make it stick?
I'm definitely optimistic we can. I think that there's a real appetite to do things differently, and to keep that sense of community that as that question and as kind of we've been talking about, make clear that actually people have been taken back to what's really important, and to connecting with one another, and being responsive to different people's needs at different times. I think we have a much broader sense of where learning can happen, how it can happen, who it happens with, what learning actually looks like. Is it just the delivered curriculum, or is it actually broader than that? And is it about, our interactions with each other and the way that we listen and the way that we work together? And I don't think those questions are going anywhere. I think they're here to stay. And I definitely feel that there's a real swell of enthusiastic appetite for those things to kind of create a future that looks a bit different. Yes, definitely.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bea. I love that sense of optimism. I as a radical optimist, I'm looking for the future to continue to become brighter. Lisa, one of the questions that I think really speaks to what we've learned in the last 2 years is, what are your thoughts about building communities online if we don't have one in person? And through this last 2 years, and we're exemplifying it now, we're all in different parts of the country, we're beaming out to various people across the world. How do you think we can build communities online?
I think I can give you an example of that. That during a story during lockdown at Storymakers, we thought about how we might connect children together and again give them a really purposeful story to work on together. So we created something called Reimagining Home, and it brought together about 200 children initially and about 8 different cultural organizations to create an immersive kind of story space for children. Central to that story space was that they had to find room in the story to move and act together. It was sort of an eco story. And so it was really modeling a lot of the feelings that we were all feeling, that we felt quite stuck, a little bit helpless. But it was this move towards purposeful collective action. What can we do? And I think that's a critical moment of of well-being, isn't it? Is of thinking about of well-being in terms of how we sit with difficulty when there isn't really a right or a wrong answer. And we know that that's one of the biggest issues around children's concerns around well-being, that they'll say the wrong thing or they won't do it the right way. And that story then went on to be used by a number of schools as their well-being curriculum, going back, as schools went back. So it was used over quite a number of schools in Lambeth. For some of them, it was connecting parents and children and communities. For some of them, it was something that ran from reception to year 6. For some of them, it became a science curriculum. It was just used. It was almost as if it had ignited our imagination to think and to work differently. And I think that's a good example of how the online world can be used in a particular way to connect people and to promote some of the the dispositions that we need to get through difficult times and that we are going to need in the future. So I think that that's an example. I think that can be used well, and I'm really optimistic about it. I'm really passionate about really having a refocus, as Bea said, on how we create community, how we listen, how we work together, and holding space for children to practice those skills in all sorts of different ways in schools. So I am very optimistic, but I also think there is a serious challenge around other expectations around curriculum. So what we need to do is we need to continue that collective drive to to bring together and to share these different ways of working that have I guess emerged out of a challenging time through COVID, and make sure that we still continue to think about ways that they can work as a form of curriculum. And we're doing that actually with 8 schools across Bradford, as part of Teacher Development Fund, and actually across a number of schools across Europe. So I think this is a really positive move, but I do think it also sits within the realistic tensions that schools have to place around expectations around curriculum. So I think, those are some of the things that we still need to work together to think about.
Realistic tensions, but also that sense of optimism and these dispositions to get us through difficult times. We're into our last 5 minutes, so we're just before we hand over to Amy in about 4 minutes. What do you think are the dispositions communities could engender in order to thrive and to flourish? Let's hear from you, each in turn. You've just got a few minutes now. What would you like to see for your community, for the organizations and individuals that you work with, and indeed for anybody who's listening in today? So over to you, B, to start us off. Positive dispositions for thriving.
Well, I think our definition of emotional health is probably a really good place to start. Being able to manage ourselves, so kind of recognizing our own difficult feelings and finding ways to manage those, and to support ourselves in times of challenge, and then building and sustaining the relationships with people around us. So for me, actually that interaction between people, how we build both individual emotional health and organizational emotional health, is really, really important, and is going to be the kind of key to building those cultures in which everybody can thrive.
Thank you so much, B. Chris, what do we need for communities to thrive? What are the dispositions we all need?
Again, just carrying on with partnerships, I was getting phone calls just before we started from my great friend Simon Kidwell, finding where I was, and then I saw our DMs from the lovely Ray asking where I was. But in realistic terms, I was just literally getting out of a minibus after collecting 100 hampers from our great friends at Give a Gift, so we can give all our most vulnerable families extra sort of food parcels over half term and things. And it's all right having this sort of vision for your community and get it and to make it happy. But there's so many brilliant businesses out there that if you approach them, you invite them into school, you show your ethos, and they speak to the children, not what I'm just telling, but they see with their own eyes, and they see for themselves the love and the respect and how you can achieve those things by using sort of a carrot, how much these businesses want to contribute. Reading, it's one of the most... Reading, even though we love our times tables here, is the single most important thing that anybody will ever do in their lives. And these businesses are absolutely fantastic at providing reading books for children. I've got a vending machine outside where companies just stock it because it's all right for my own daughter. If she wants a new reading book, onto Amazon, delivered the next day. But there's no bookshops in Seacroft and things. So it's important for us as a community that we're listening to what the community need, and we're actually sharing those things. And very quickly, if I just may, for all the teachers, head teachers and people in education out there, there's, and if you get a pen, there's a charity called the Henry Smith Charity. And these provide holiday grants. It's one of the few charities where you can get a holiday grant to pay for your school residential. And they've just opened up yesterday their new pot of money. They open it up 3 times a year. And yesterday, the Henry Smith charity have just opened up their holiday fund where schools can apply for a 50% of the residentials being paid for.
Thank you so much, Chris. So partnerships and practical positive action. Finally, Lisa, some positive dispositions to build community.
I think this notion of collective responsibility and the power of the collective, and really focusing on that, and thinking about what actually connects us. Professional trust, listening to, all of such a wonderful discussion here, really amplifying what's working well, and that also trusting in children's experiences and listening to their voice as well. I would say all of those are kind of a renewed focus, and also, for policymakers to think about the power of research as well. There's some of the, for example, research that particularly focuses on how young people feel.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Bea. Thank you, Chris. A really stimulating conversation this sunny spring afternoon. I'm being optimistic the spring is sprung. And I'm going to hand back now to Amy.
When you said spring there, I just looked out the window and thought, oh, I haven't really got any blue sky here. Thank you so much, everyone, for that talk. And I really resonated with what you said about community when it comes to what's happened in the past 2 years and people's neighborhood and that collective effort. And it just made me feel really good. And I hope, like you said, Bea, that I am positive that it will continue. So for everyone watching, we have been live tweeting throughout the talk. So we have linked to everyone's Twitter handles and their organization, so you can find out more there. And also we have streamed this. It is live on YouTube, so you can watch back if you need to watch back. Head to smileymovement.org and you'll be able to see the full talk there. But again, thank you, Ray, for hosting, and thank you for all our speakers. Hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.